Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm just halfway through a delightful croissant. Nick doesn't eat them, apparently, but...
Oh, I've had a pan of raisin already.
Quite rightly. John Blake, you can see, has joined us, Chief Executive of Racing to School, to talk about the charity going forward, celebrating 25 years. John, welcome.
Thank you. I've had my breakfast, so I won't be indulging there. But no, thanks for getting me along. And yes, a huge year for the charity, and great team effort for our staff, our predecessors, and our trustees. But yep, 25 years. Long time ago, since the first 1,000 children went to a Racing to School. They started off at Aintree in 2001, and this year, all things being well, will be 18,500 participants. So a good trajectory.
How do schools get involved?
Well, we have what I call a lot of repeat business, which sounds a bit corporate for a charity and involving children. But we've had a lot of schools around sort of race courses. So one of the slight barriers to entry for us is the proximity to a racing venue, because you don't want children in a bus for 2 hours one way and 2 hours coming back. So we have a lot of schools that we sort of started with and have grown with. But we are absolutely open and accessible, kindly because of our funders, principally the levy board, that people can go on the website, get in touch with the team, and we can get them involved. If not at a race course, then perhaps a trainer's yard and a stud, where we've worked on an increasing level in recent years, or we go to them, and that's part of it really. The innovation is go to a school, do an assembly, do something a bit more creative. We try to get them to horses, which is key, and get them in front of the live product, so that excitement, the thrill, the tangible, experience is there, the sensory experience, which we've all had when we were younger. That's what we want to embed in them. But if not, then you have to do it a different way. So, yeah, we're open to all. We're booking into next year, which is good and bad because we have a waiting list. But, yeah, it's proving to be very successful.
I guess the benefit to racing is pretty obvious and transparent, that, you can get young people involved in the sport, get them enjoying it, get them coming back. Well, what would be the obvious benefits to the schools themselves and to the kids that turn up?
Well, that's a great question, because as a charity, irrespective of what sector you work in, ours is racing, the beneficiaries have to be in the middle. You have to point your work toward the beneficiary. So what do they want? What's in it for them? Why is it relevant for them? Racing is a secondary beneficiary, in my view. We're not a recruitment agency. We are not banging the drum about, buying a horse or anything else. If those things follow, wonderful. What's in it for them is a different type of learning. It is a fast-moving classroom whereby their maths, science, social science, history, any school subject, really, biology, whatever it might be, can be translated into a fun activity. Hands-on learning, mental arithmetic, and especially for young people that perhaps the more traditional learning methods, the four walls of a classroom and learning things by rote, as it were, just doesn't work, doesn't click for them. So the point is, how do we put together a relevant, teacher-approved, and we have teachers looking at the programme the whole time, set of activities that is going to enhance and help the learning of those children. So 60% of our work is primary, the other 40 obviously secondary. So what we want to do is get them to do some work back in school. So they have an activity book when they're with us at a race course, of which they would do, say, 60% on the day, but then they take that with them. So we're giving a lesson to a primary school in that way. And that's often evidenced by the fact of the follow-up thank you letters that we get. We might have some creative writing that comes through, photographs, drawings, a longitudinal impact of that. So it's absolutely what's in it for the child. Of course, it'd be incredible if there is a lifelong relationship with racing. And of course, we want that on a macro level, and that's why we work at scale, and scale is what it's all about. But ultimately, has your education improved? Have you got on well with your mates on the day? Perhaps you've connected with your teacher in a way you haven't before, which is often the feedback we've got. And then you will have a memory, a sensory memory, and maybe when you're older, you may come back to racing. You may even be an owner, but also you may have a conversation with someone who says, well, racing's cruel, isn't it? Well, not when I was at St. Mary's Primary, actually. We saw this. We saw the horses being checked for microchipped. We saw the rubber matting. We saw how they were looked after. So there's lots of things that you can build together.
Yeah, I think that's another really interesting point. And the younger you start witnessing that and being around horses and being around the people working with them, the more you'll enhance your learning. And I think I was guilty initially of seeing, I think the first time I was with you at Sandown and interviewed you, I was thinking, oh, how great for racing, but not really appreciating what it can actually do for the kids in the school.
Yeah, no, I'm sure, and the argument that John makes for that is very persuasive. And at Sandon on Friday, a group of young kids in high-vis jackets were wandering around the racecourse. John, on a day like that, would they have had a chance to actually get close to a horse?
Yes and no. I mean, obviously, we have to be very careful when children are on the racecourse for obvious reasons. But because, and just so viewers who don't know, I mean, we get access, we get VIP access. We're there just after the start of a school day, so 9:30, 9:45 in the morning. So they're roaming around all the areas, including often, if we have time, to take them to see the horses coming off the lorries, the microchipping, the BHA are great with that. They let us, see that process as well. And of course, they're seeing races in the parade ring, etc. But then they're not, there's no hands-on in that regard. And I think that's something which, increasingly is important. A lot of the children may have seen a police horse. They may have seen a horse in a field,
which is
past it. But yeah, I mean, the stud visits are great for that, and the trainer visits that we do are great for that. So it's whetting the appetite a little bit. But I'm a big believer every racecourse should have at every meeting a horse that is accessible to everybody. Yeah. I think that should be like an ice cream van. Why that? I mean, it's happening more, but.
It's the big. But you see them. They when you have. At Ascot, you have the former Andrew Balding horse. I can't remember his name.
Side Glances.
Yes, Side Glance, who is there, and people love going and mobbing Side Glance. I like that.
Yeah, which is why I think it's important. If we can get the kids to a race day, they actually can get close up to a horse, because particularly anyone who lives in an urban environment, their proximity to the horse is in one side is almost non-existent. So to be able to show children, look, this is a horse, maybe a former racehorse. York have done that in the past with Gold Dream, who's been there for so many meetings. To have that opportunity, I think that would be really valuable.
And there's something about if you're a child who's used to being around horses, it's not lost on me when you see someone have their first interaction with half a ton of animal, particularly someone from inner city schools or whatever. They're like the animals. These horses are huge, particularly to a kid that stands at 3 foot.
I mean, just the smell of a horse.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember that, the smell of cut grass. It takes you back. And if racing is given a child... I mean, we do a little bit of work with Lawrence Delalio's charity, Rugby Works. Works very well with children who have been either excluded from school or on the cusp of that. Some really, hard stories for some children there. We took a few to Sandown, actually, last year. And there was a group of them, a small group, and a couple of the boys were being boys and mucking about. I was with them. And I looked behind me, and they were both stroking the grass. I thought, what are you doing? It said, oh, well, we've never seen grass like this. We're stroking the grass. And I thought, well, if we'd given those children, those boys, right, who had awful backstories, by the way, given them something, something natural that they've never experienced before, based in Croydon, it was their school, you're building on something, because racecourses offer a huge amount of horses, of course, but the open, natural, green spaces, which aren't actually that far from a lot of the inner city children. So you can take it at all sorts of levels. And of course, we want to encourage those young people who've grown up with horses to go further. Of course we do. But it's taking everyone somewhere on that journey that gives them something. And yeah, of course we'd love people to go and work in the sport. But the sport's got to do its bit and make sure there's good opportunities there, good employers, opportunities to progress. We're not here to solve racing's problems as such. We're here to create, at scale, a good interest in the sport that will help its social licence, as is often bandied around, on a long-term basis.
Does anything concern you when you are working with these young people about a future in and around horse racing?
Well, I think the point about, I often think, well, I'll be writing a cheque the sport can't cash in terms of saying, well, there's these jobs and these opportunities. But, a subject that those that know me will know I go on about a lot is young people's relationship with gambling. And it's often quite a taboo subject because of the sensitivities around age, etc. But it seems to me that, racing is the only sport inextricably linked to gambling. Gambling is everywhere, pervasive in terms of its advertising, which is not remotely a bad thing at all, but to actually have racing taking part in a conversation, a healthy conversation, the same way around financial literacy or sex education or drugs awareness, all the things that young people need to be equipped with in life, I think is a huge opportunity. We rarely get asked by the children, the teachers, parents about gambling, which I always thought was quite interesting when I first started 10 years ago. I thought, oh, I'm about to be inundated with this once or twice. But I love the fact when people ask about anything controversial, jockey use of the whip, fatalities in horse racing or gambling, because it gives an opportunity to have a conversation. For every person that asks a question, 10 probably think it and don't ask. But I genuinely believe if racing can, in a responsible way, talk about, well, this is how the sport works, this is a part of the sport, it's a healthy thing, but, there are safeguards and various things. And there's organisations that work in that space. And I think racing needs to be in the conversation, because if not, who is having those conversations with young people?
Front foot. We talk about this in loads of areas in horse racing, don't we, Lee, that are challenging to them, being on the front foot. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think if racing is confident in its own product, and that extends to gambling as well as equine welfare, and racing should be confident in its own product, then there's no reason why racing wouldn't want to be on the front foot. The worst thing racing can ever look is defensive about the sport, because the sport has no need to feel defensive.
Difficult balance, though, I guess. It is. To be going in there I can imagine presenting to a room of, what's the oldest age group you work with?
Well, our sweet spot is probably 9 to 14, that sort of mark.
Going to a group of just teenagers saying,
of course.
So, gambling, but I totally see exactly what you mean. You want to be front-footed and explain about it before they get the wrong idea.
I mean, Lee was making the point about Westminster earlier. Again, it's a personal view, but I genuinely believe that the very valid arguments, which proceeded on the tax issue that we had in the past and now affordability checks, if there was an attendant commitment from racing to say, look what we are actually doing, as well as the strong view of, look at the damage you're doing to us as a sport, which is legitimate to say, but actually look what we're doing in terms of investment, or this is our approach to it. I think that would perhaps persuade some of the more less interested and less knowledgeable ministers or MPs that you were talking about, Lee, that actually, okay, they're not just trying to save themselves, they're not just trying to look after the farm, as it were. They're actually genuinely interested in investment in some way. And not, we don't have to be in isolation with this, but other sports do it. And we don't wait until people are licensed and they go on mandatory courses, because you've gone from here to a tiny proportion of people. And then, it's because I've got to obey the rules, haven't I? So I think you're right. The point about confidence is clear. But your point about how do you present that, sure, children don't lie at that sort of age, the 9s and 10s. They'll tell you what they think about stuff. And I think you've just got to be upfront about it. And, it's not about converting anybody. You've got to just let them think about it. I mean, you listen to the radio, I'm with my 15-year-old son, right? He's hearing ads after ads after ads of bookmakers because of my personal choices of radio. And that's okay, but then I can talk to him. But if you're not talking to young people and they're hearing this stuff, then do we think when they're 18 that morning they're going to wake up and know how to place a Yankee? Or are they going to be possessed of the confidence to also speak about it if it does become a bit of a challenge? So I just feel both the political side of it, both the sports investment and the young people themselves, there's a strong argument that something could be really positive to be done.
John, thank you so much. Really enjoyed that. John Blake, Chief Executive of Racing to School. If you are a parent out there who'd like your school to get involved, or if you are indeed representative of a school, then head to Racing to School to find out more.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.